Shall I start, sir?
Please.
Yeah. Okay, sir.
Please.
A very warm good morning to one and all present here. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. With this quote of Nelson Mandela, I, Naveed Wani, 8th semester student, Department of Civil Engineering, signing in as Master of Ceremony for webinar organized by Department of Civil Engineering in association with Sarthi Geotech and Engineering Services Private Limited on overview of deep foundation testing methods by Dr. C.R. Parthasarathy Sir, founder, chairman, and MD, SGES Private Limited, Bangalore. It's my pleasure to welcome each and everyone present here today for this event. As we all know, every work we start with the blessings of God. So let's begin this event by seeking the blessings of God. I now request Chikana PN, first year student, to grace the occasion by seeking the blessings of God. Chikana PN.
Thank you. Is my voice audible?
Yeah, Chikana.
Okay. ಓ ಎನ್ನುಬ ಗಣಪ ಕರೆದಾಗ ಓ ಎನ್ನುಬ ಗಣಪ ಗಣಪ ಓ ಎನ್ನುಬ ಗಣಪ ಕರೆದಾಗ ಓ ಎನ್ನುಬ ಗಣಪ ಓಂಕಾರನಾದಲೋಲ ಹೇ ಗಣಪ ಓಂಕಾರ ರೂಪ ಶ್ರೀ ಗಣಪ ಓಂಕಾರನಾದಲೋಲ ಹೇ ಗಣಪ ಓಂಕಾರ ರೂಪ ಶ್ರೀ ಗಣಪ ಓ ಎನ್ನುಬ ಗಣಪ ಕರೆದಾಗ ಓ ಎನ್ನುಬ ಗಣಪ ಮಾಯ ವಿನಾಶಕ ಮೂಷಿಕ ವಾಹನ ಮಾತ ಭವಾನಿ ಪಾರ್ವತಿ ನಂದನ ಮಾಯ ವಿನಾಶಕ ಮೂಷಿಕ ವಾಹನ ಮಾತ ಭವಾನಿ ಪಾರ್ವತಿ ನಂದನ ಮಹಾಗಣಪತೆ ಪರಮದಯ ಗಣ ಮಹಾಗಣಪತೆ ಪರಮದಯ ಗಣ ಶಂಭೋ ನಂದನ ಕರೆವೆನು ನಾ ಶಂಭೋ ನಂದನ ಕರೆವೆನು ನಾ ಓ ಎನ್ನುಬ ಗಣಪ ಕರೆದಾಗ ಓ ಎನ್ನುಬ ಗಣಪ ಗಜಮುಖದವನೇ ಗಣಗಳಿಗೊಡೆಯ ಮೊದಲ ಪೂಜೆಯನು ಪಡೆಯುವ ದೇವನೇ ಗಜಮುಖದವನೇ ಗಣಗಳಿಗೊಡೆಯ ಮೊದಲ ಪೂಜೆಯನು ಪಡೆಯುವ ದೇವನೇ ಆತ್ಮಲಿಂಗವನು ಧರೆಯಲಿ ಇಟ್ಟವನೇ ಆತ್ಮಲಿಂಗವನು ಧರೆಯಲಿ ಇಟ್ಟವನೇ ಬಾಲಗಣೇಶನೇ ಕರೆದೆನು ನಾ ಬಾಲಗಣೇಶನೇ ಕರೆದೆನು ನಾ ಓ ಎನ್ನುಬ ಗಣಪ ಕರೆದಾಗ ಓ ಎನ್ನುಬ ಗಣಪ ಓಂಕಾರನಾದಲೋಲ ಹೇ ಗಣಪ ಓಂಕಾರ ರೂಪ ಶ್ರೀ ಗಣಪ ಓ ಎನ್ನುವ ಗಣಪ ಕರೆದಾಗ ಓ ಎನ್ನುವ ಗಣಪ. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು.
Thank you, Chikana. We all feel blessed indeed. Now, I request our beloved HOD, Dr. S.K. Prasad sir, to welcome all the dignitaries and the audience on behalf of the institution on this auspicious event.
Thank you, Abdul Naveed. Very good morning, everybody. I see many very honored dignitaries like, Professor Pranesh, Dr. A.P. Singh, Dr. Solanki, and many others, from IGS. And then, I see, my colleagues from the Department of Civil Engineering, my students, and of course, the, big man of the occasion, Dr. Parthasarathy. Very good morning to every one of you. I just take a minute or two to tell about my department. I am here in this college for the last 13 months, and I have really enjoyed my stay here. And we have seen that, the Department of Civil Engineering is growing tremendously, all because of the, energetic efforts by my young faculty. We are 17 faculty members. We have an excellent faculty-student ratio. We have very good infrastructure here, and we want to be among the best. We are accredited by NBA. Our institution is NAAC accredited with an A grade. We are looking forward to being in the NIRF ranking this year. So all these are possible when the honorable people here, you bless us. And fortunately, our college management is also extremely friendly and very supportive of all our efforts. So having said this, I just want to mention that with an intention to make our students more, develop in all the directions. We started with 3 clubs this year. One of them is Sustira, which mainly looks at, the sustainability kind of aspects. The other one, which is now hosting this program, is Nirman Club. Then we also have Research Studio. A lot of activities have taken place, and we want our students to be involved in every aspect, get practical exposure, and then, develop all around. So with that intention, we have these 3 clubs, and they're doing very well. Nirman Club, today physically they're hosting their club. Otherwise, they have already been involved with developing videos of dictionaries of civil engineering words. More than 20 episodes they have already developed. I, on behalf of the Department of Civil Engineering, take pleasure in welcoming each one of you delegates, all the delegates from outside our college, our faculty members, the students, and I'm very, very sure that you people will make this program a grand success. The next part I would like to talk about is Dr. Parthasarathy, whom I have always admired. I brought him here only because I want our students to learn what kind of a person he is. My association with him is, over the last perhaps about 2 decades. He's a very simple, humble person. He started from scratch, and the kind of, the company he has started, I really admire. He has everything there. It is truly international. He has many, many international clients, and, he takes up all big projects, and he's not scared of, buying the best of the equipments and doing things. And, he is always very energetic. Today he has many important activities, but still he readily agreed to deliver the lecture. The reason is he wants to give out, especially to the students and to the needy, who somebody who wants to do research. Okay, he always welcomes to his laboratory and provides with whatever best he can. So in that regard, I want my students to get to know about him and learn from him many things. I tell you, the only way we all can come up is by showing some sincerity and some discipline, and he has all the good characters. So Dr. Partha, we are really blessed to have you amidst us always. And today, I welcome you for this presentation by you, and we are eager to listen to you. With this, then, I have to welcome each and every one of you. I'm very sure that this program is going to be very successful. Thank you, every one of you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your appreciation. I'm deeply humbled today. I'll try my best to convey. Arvind, can you make me host? I want to share co-host, please. Share the screen.
But I think, formally you'll be introduced by one of my students, one of my colleagues. Okay, maybe they will just take a couple of minutes more, sir.
Yeah, very briefly, sir. I'll spend the time with.
Thank you, sir. And I extend a warm welcome to you too, sir, for this event.
Thank you. Thank you, Naveen.
Today, on this auspicious event, we are officially going to inaugurate our Club Nirman, Build with Nature. So, for this purpose, I request our honorable guest to inaugurate our club logo. Coming together is the beginning, keeping together is the progress, and working together is the success. Thank you, sir. Sir, for logo of the club, Team Nirman organized a logo design competition in the month of April, in which students from different departments of our college, as well as our college alumni, actively participated in this competition. The final logo was selected by committee members, and today we are announcing the winner of logo design competition. The winner is one and only one, our alumni, Dharnesh HC, who passed out in the year 2017. Congratulations, Dharnesh HC, and thank you for the logo for this club. Now, I request Tejaswini, second year student in Department of Civil Engineering, to speak few words about Nirman.
Thank you, Navesh. Nirman is a core club of Civil Engineering Department of PVCE Mysuru. It was started with the aim to explore and learn about the vastness of this stream. It involves students in different competitions and events that will be carried out throughout the year. It provides opportunity for students to visit different industrial sites and get benefited with the industrial exposure. It motivates and inspires students towards conducting lecture series and panel discussions where we invite eminent personalities from different fields of industries to share their insights and to engage with students. The events that will be conducted under this club are industrial visits, lecture series, concrete fest, research paper presentation, and innovative idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Tejaswini. You can't build a great building on a weak foundation. You must have a solid foundation if you are going to have a strong superstructure. Now, I request Professor Arjun V. sir to introduce our honorable guest, Dr. C.R. Parthasarathy sir, to the gathering.
Good morning, everyone. It's my privilege to introduce today's chief guest, Dr. Parthasarathi sir. Dr. C.R. Parthasarathi sir is a well-known person in the field of geotechnical engineering. He completed his BE and ME degrees in civil engineering and geotechnical engineering from Bangalore University. He completed his PhD from the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore in the year 2002. He started his career as a geotechnical engineer in the year 1993. He has involved in the various investigation and engineering studies at various level for the multi-storied complexes, industrial buildings, embankments, bridges, water retaining structures, subways, pavement, and offshore platforms, and also for the pipelines. Parthasarathi sir has worked in various countries. His various countries like Australia, Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand, Brunei, etc., and also in the Singapore. Parthasarathi sir is the founder director of Sarthi Geotech and Engineering Services Private Limited. The company, with its registered office at Bangalore, was established in year 2008, which provide both offshore and on-land integrated geotechnical engineering services in India and abroad. Since 2008, he has involved in various consultation assignments in the field of ground improvement, pile foundation, marine engineering, on-land geotechnical investigation, offshore foundation assessment, including jack-up rigs and platforms. Apart from offshore pile monitoring, Parthasarathi sir is instrumental in promoting the quality testing of deep foundation in India. He is also a member in various professional bodies like Deep Foundation Institute, Indian Geotechnical Society, Indian International Society for Rock Mechanics, and Indian Concrete Institute. He's the member of the Institute of Engineers, and also he is the member of Society for Underwater Technology. It is our pleasure to have with us, sir. Welcome you, sir. Over to you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir, for your brief introduction. Projects we have completed demonstrate what we know. Future projects decide what we learn. Without further delay, I hand over the session to Dr. C.R. Parthasarathi, sir. Over to you, sir.
We can't hear you, Parthasarathi, sir.
Can you hear me, sir, now?
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Can you hear me? Thank you very much for a very detailed introduction. I thank the organizers, Department of Civil Engineering, Vidyavardhaka College of Engineering, and Nirman Club for giving me an opportunity to share some experience. Thank you, Professor S.K. Prasad. The topic of today's presentation is overview of deep foundation testing methods. So I see there are mixed audience today. Before I start the presentations, a few seconds, I want to conduct a small poll, about 20 seconds. Arvind, can you see if your polls are there? Can you open the poll, Arvind? Huh? Poll ilvalla ಇಲ್ಲಿ. Log into another system. Polling. Okay, anyway, so I'll come back to that towards the end. Sorry about that problem with the logistics. So let me quickly jump into the presentation. So before I get into the presentation, a couple of minutes, I wanted to share our service offerings about the company. So we started in the year 2007 to provide an integrated approach for both offshore and online projects. Here is our mission and vision. SGS experienced value engineering. So we do the geotechnical investigation and also the foundation testing. So thereby, so we will also observe the behavior of soils and recalibrate the ground models. That's how we provide value engineering to future projects. We provide solutions to any kind of geotechnical problems. It is, be it an on land, marine, or offshore, deep water, doesn't matter. Okay, we are present in India, in Indonesia, Saudi, UAE, and Nigeria as well. So here is the quick glance of our services: integrated geotechnical and geophysical investigation, drivability study for hammer selection, fatigue during driving. I'll be talking at length about these pile driving analyzers in one of the high strength dynamic tests. I'll give an introduction to this case pile wave analysis program called CAPAP, Jacob rig analysis. The other things will be a part of the engineering report, the load transfer curves, mud mat analysis, liquefaction potential, and design of pile and pile groups, pipeline geotechnics. And here is the set of softwares that we normally use. The recent is Flat 3D for modeling the complex three-dimensional soil structure interaction problems. In the online space, conduct the geophysical investigation, geological investigations, geotechnical with SPT energy measurement. I'll not be much spending time on this, but I'll just give you an introduction to this: design of shallow deep foundation, the dynamic pile load test, crosshole sonic logging, geotechnical laboratory. All the green ones are NABL accredited. I'll be at length discussing about these technologies. Okay, the ground engineering solutions, particularly for deep excavations, we have maybe more than 15 projects of designing and building deep excavations of vertical cuts nearly up to about 18 meters. Currently, we are working on a vertical cut of about 22 meters. So we have introduced this high-end multi-purpose drilling rigs currently operational for the bullet train project in Surat. It conducts an SPT test with an automatic hammer. So there's an energy calibration. So we'll be talking about this using the strain gauge and axometers. It'll be similar to what we can normally use for the high strength dynamic test as well. Okay. Now coming to the deep foundation testing, it's also one of our core competence. We have complete solutions for deep foundation testing, starting from the conventional static load test, axial compression, pull out and lateral, maybe with the Kentlage or with reaction methods. We have also introduced recently with partnering with a Malaysian company called YJAC to conduct this bidirectional load test. I don't think I'll be talking about this because of paucity of time. Low strain integrity test, crosshole sonic logging test, and thermal integrity profiler. I'll just give an introduction to TIP. These two are the integrity methods to evaluate the integrity of the foundation. Shape and Squid, I'll give an introduction, which is a quality control tool prior to pouring concrete. And we can discuss about this high strength dynamic test. Okay. Now, there are many students are there. So others kindly bear for a few minutes, maybe 2-3 minutes before I give an introduction and set the context for today's presentations. So as we all know, when we have a weak ground, the loads from the superstructure has to be transferred to a competent ground. Maybe it's available somewhere at a greater depth. So that's where we use this deep foundation, which is introduced into the ground, and the loads from the superstructure is transferred through this foundation called pile foundation. When most of the capacity is derived from the strong layer, maybe rock, at greater depth, it is an end-bearing pile. Sometimes if the rock is available at greater depth, you can also transfer the loads to the friction between the soil and the pile. We call it as end-bearing pile. So these are the two types of load transfers. It could be somewhere in between. So the pile can have a component of end-bearing or a component of friction as well. So as to the type of pile, it's based on the material, steel, concrete, timber, and composite piles. Based on the mode of load transfer I just now described. Method of installation could be a driven pile, driven cast in situ, board pile, screw and jack pile. And based on the applications, it can be a load-bearing pile, compaction pile, tension pile, sheet pile, fender pile, etc. So I think all of you would have learned this in your courses, foundation engineering course. And based on displacement, could be a displacement and a non-displacement pile. So today's discussions will be mostly on the concrete pile, since this is non-displacement pile. So driven piles essentially will be the displacement pile. So we will focus today's discussion on concrete and non-displacement pile. So to evaluate capacity, as I said, the total capacity of the pile will be the summation of the skin friction component as well as the end bearing component. There are many methods to evaluate the capacity of piles. I will not go in detail today. Usually for our marine or offshore piles, we follow the American Petroleum Institute guidelines, API guidelines. We have the IS 2911 Part 1 Section 2 guidelines also to evaluate the capacity of piles. So you can use any of these methods, whatever the criteria, the owner specifications derives. So I draw your attention to factor of safety. When you have evaluated the ultimate capacity, so we apply a factor of safety, right? For a static load test, the factor of safety will be around 2 when you physically put the loads on the pile and evaluate your load displacement curve. When you conduct a dynamic test, your factor of safety can be 2.325. I draw your attention to the dynamic formula method, which is a very obsolete method, but still today, even today, there is a practice of using the dynamic formula in evaluating the ultimate pile capacity. The factor of safeties are very high. Okay. Now, this is how the static load tests are conducted. You put a cartilage on top of a loading platform. You place your jack on the pile, and then you load this on the reaction methods, and all the loads get transferred, and you measure the displacement using the dial gauges. Okay. So it has its own disadvantages. I think today's the demand is to put a load cell to evaluate what loads are transferring rather than using a calibrated jack. So there was a project, it was an arbitration project. People said that driven piles were used, and then both sides, the client side, owner side, they were all arguing that the pile foundation, particularly the driven piles, were very new in technology. They did not know about this and blaming each other. So when you look back the literature, pile foundation is not new for civil engineers. Okay, it is there that the archaeologists have built several structures on driven piles, even at Neolithic. Those days were all small diameter timber piles. Okay, you know that the Romans built the bridge on River Nile within 10 days. Okay, so in those days, also the similar kind of pile installation methods, you have a primitive loading frame with the dead weights, and even today we use the same thing to drive the pile. So we just lift the dead weight and drop on the piles and drive the piles. So what has changed today from this olden days is the high strength materials, concrete and steel, and most importantly, the capacity of piles. The earlier days, the timber piles a small capacity of 30 meganewton and 30 metric tons, maybe 40 metric tons. Today, we are talking pile capacities in the order of about 7,000 metric tons, 10,000 metric tons. So that has changed today, and thus the technology has also developed to handle those kind of high capacity piles. From these early century skid rigs to drive the piles, today we have construction barges which can handle very high capacity piles. It can handle the hammers, which is weighing about maybe about 150 tons, which can impart the energy in the order of about 2,000, 3,000 kilojoules. The pile size is also very small size of 3-4 inches micro pile to as big as around 3.5 meters. We have the experience of monitoring and measurements of those pile foundations. If you go to the offshore wind sector, the monopiles are in the diameter of about 4 to 8 meters. The length of pile also below the ground, it will be as shallow as around 2.5 meters called stub piles, and as deep as around 150, 160 meters is not uncommon. So we have seen all kinds of installations. Okay, so this is a concrete pile, precast pile. It will be cast in the yard. You can append, and then you can drive the pile. So this is a steel pile which we normally use for oil and gas projects. Okay, pipe piles is open-ended pipe piles. Again, you append and then start driving into the ground. So the piles are driven by hammers. Either it can be a gravity hammer or a vibratory hammer. Air or steam hammer and diesel hammer are very routinely used. But today we have hydraulic hammers which are very powerful, popular, and steel to steel do not require any cushion. So we can drive those piles with hydraulic hammers. And this is one drop hammers, just lift a dead weight and drop it on the top of a pile, which has a helmet and a cushion inside. You need to also ensure that the positional tolerance has to be maintained. So you use a template, particularly when you have soft clays. Even in the marine condition offshore, you use a jacket structure as a template where the length of this jacket will be equal to your water depth. Okay, and the piles are guided to this jacket can and driven below the seabed. And this is an hydraulic hammer. Okay. Now, what was the measurements that was made earlier? Measurement in the early days was only set per blow. Okay. So when you give a blow, what is the net settlement it has achieved? And based on the set per blow, there are hundreds of empirical equations to evaluate or estimate the ultimate bearing capacity. You could see here the I12, the Dutch formula, the Weisbach formula, engineering news formula. There are hundreds of them. So I draw your attention to this recommended factor of safety. So all of these formulas recommend a factor of safety of 3 to 6. Okay, even the Hiley's formula, Rankine's formula, Yarnbru's formula. Okay. We have seen that even today there are some projects which adopt the dynamic formula and use a factor of safety of 2, which is actually very, very unconservative. You cannot use that. So the simplicity of most pile driving formula leads to the major disadvantage is the inaccuracy of those formula, and use of these driving formula exclusively can lead to dangerously low factor of safety and uneconomically high ones. And the variety and number are matched only by their shortcomings. So in fact, there was an AC conference in the early 40s. 10 years before the conference, people have accumulated the database. The big names in geotechnical engineering, Terzaghi, Casagrande, Skempton, all of them were present in this conference. Okay, this is a original print from that conference extract. Terzaghi summarized this slide, which shows the percentage of observed load at failure and the ultimate capacity evaluated by various dynamic formula. Okay. Now, if the comparison between the static and dynamic formula was reasonably good, all these data points should have collapsed at this 100% of observed failure, load at failures. But you see the variations is between 50 to 300%. This gives no confidence to anybody to use the dynamic formula to evaluate or estimate the ultimate bearing capacity. And thus, the dynamic formula was disgraced in 1940, early 40s itself. And later on, Smith in the early 60s developed the one-dimensional wave propagation theory. And also the extension of the Smith's work was the work of GRL and Pile Dynamics, who built this pile driving analyzer and so on. So I'll go to give an introduction to that as well. So in 2015, they released a newsletter, Pile Dynamics, that the designs based on dynamic formula was already discouraged in 40s. They were referring to that IAC conference where Terzaghi had made that presentation. So during the installation of pile, the pile could be perfect. You can have an intact pile. There could be anomaly like necking. We have a reduction in the cross section or an impedance, the cracking of the pile or a bulging of pile. And this anomaly can happen anywhere along the length of the pile. It could be at the bottom, at the mid level, or at the top. Once the piles are introduced into the ground, no way you will be able to evaluate unless there is some measurements to this. Okay. So this is a project where driven piles, and the piles are already broken or it is bent. While excavating for constructing the pile cap, only 2 meters, the piles are all broken. So there is no load still, and these piles have to withstand the load from the superstructure of about 16, 17 stories. Okay. Now, during driving of those precast piles, the tensile stresses could be very high, even the compressive stresses could be very high. So the piles could be susceptible to damage. This is another case where the pile was installed in a project which has to carry the load from superstructure of about 22-story buildings. For the lift pits, they have to excavate a little deeper to cast the pile cap. So when they started excavating, they could see one stirrup. They excavated a little deeper, another stirrup, and finally when they exhumed the pile, the bottom 3 meters did not have concrete. And this is not uncommon. We have seen also in many projects. It is a very short pile. So the top of the pile is so good, but at the bottom do not have any concrete. When you exhume, you could all see that these are all stub piles to be placed on the rock. So you could see the anomalies in the pile installation. The pile tops could be damaged. There could be necking. There could be bleeding of concrete. the pile toe could be damaged. There could be serious defect within the pile. So how do we evaluate the defects in the pile once it is in the ground? Structural engineers and architects, no, their work is already recognized because you see the superstructure, but the geotechnical engineers' efforts is already buried in the ground because these foundations are inside the ground. So you will not be able to evaluate unless there is some measurements made. So friends, today we have a whole arsenal of modern technology and tools to assist in providing efficient and economical deep foundation solutions. Okay. So because the limitation of the pile driving measurements earlier days with only set per blow, the research began at Case Institute of Technology and resulted in the development of pile driving analyzer, which is a pile capacity from pile top measurements. Wave equation analysis program, I am not be talking of this today. This is essentially for pre-installation study for hammer selection. Case pile wave analysis program is a CAPAP. This is a post-test analysis. The data from the PDA is imported to the CAPAP softwares and analysis made to evaluate the capacity of the pile. Arvind, there's some drawings made. The annotations, can you remove, please? So when there is an impact given to the top of the pile, the stress waves propagates all along the length of the pile. As long as there is no resistance or the section changes, these stress waves propagates all along the length to the bottom of the pile, and then there is a reflection from the bottom because there is a medium change. Stresses in pile can be represented by one-dimensional wave theory, okay, and these stress waves can be analyzed by measured pile top force and velocity. So how do we make measurements of this force and velocity? So we can make measurements by embedding the strain gauge below the top of pile. Okay, the strain gauge measures the strain in the member. We know the modulus, which is stress by strain. So if you have the strain measurements, you can get the stress. Knowing the cross-sectional area, you can get the force. And mounting axiometers measures the motion of the pile. Integrating this accelerations will give the velocity. The force and velocity are proportional with a constant called impedance, which is defined as the modulus cross-sectional area divided by the wave speed. So I'm not going to derive today this relationship. This is a part of the training program, so we can actually derive this relationship. So when there is an impact on the top of the pile, the stress wave actually enters. This is where you see the initial rise of the stress wave. As it passes through the gauge locations, the peak of those stress waves are passing to the sensor location. That's where you see the initial peak. And the stress wave propagates along the length of the pile. That is where you see the response from the toe. Okay, but the gauges are not seeing this unless these reflected waves come back to the gauge location. Now the reflected waves come back to the wave location and it passes. That's where you see the initial toe response and the peak toe response. Okay. So what you see on the graph is a force measured by the strain gauge. The other color is a velocity multiplied by incidence is again a force unit. So force, velocity, time history. Okay. Now this stress waves, when it enters the pile, has to travel a distance L, and then it has to travel a distance another L when it reaches the gauge locations to see the toe response. Therefore, from the initial peak, a time 2L divided by wave speed will be the time on the x-axis. Okay, that is where you see the toe response here. Okay, so this is the top of the pile. 2L by C time thereafter, you see the response from the pile toe. Okay. Now, the force and velocity are on top of each other. That means there is no resistance or there is no impedance change. There is no cross-sectional change. If there is a soil resistance, you will see the difference in the force and velocity. A separation of these waves we'll see in the next slide. So when you give an impact, low strain test, a small impact pulses, goes down, it travels down, and then there is a reflection, there's an upward traveling wave. So there's a downward traveling wave, there's an upward traveling wave. In case of high strain test, when you do the dynamic test for pile capacity, these stress waves are massive and have long piles. Okay, so there will be always a superposition of these what is coming into the pile, there's an input from the hammer, and what is going up the pile, which is the response from the soil. So there is a superposition of these massive high strength stress waves. So we need to separate what is coming down, what is going up. So that's a part of the interpretation. So I'm not talking about it because of the paucity of time. I'm just giving you some introduction background so you all understand. So we are technological partners of Pile Dynamics. They have made us representatives to represent them in this part of the world to conduct training programs, to conduct workshops, provide consultancy services, and promote this technology. It's a beautiful technology. Unless it is understood how to use it, it is very difficult. So we conduct training programs on this high strength dynamic test, which covers the wave equation, wave mechanics. We discuss about the background of the wave mechanics, the relationships that is developed from the wave mechanics, the separation of the waves, case methods, and so on. Proper practice, this is very important. You know, how to do the pile top preparations, how to get the data. Okay, once you get good data, then analysis becomes simple. If you do not have good data, no matter how sophisticated your software, analysis becomes very tedious. And quality assessment, application, and interpretations, finally, will have an hands-on experience on this very sophisticated CAPAP software. I'll give an introduction to this. So we conduct training programs. Currently, because of pandemic, it's online. So very soon we're going to do offline program as well. If anybody is interested, so please reach out to us. We can customize based on your needs. Now, there's also a proficiency test for this technology, pdaproficiencytest.com. Based, this is a collaboration between Pile Dynamics and Pile Driving Contractor Association in the US. You can go to this website. You could see all those people who are certified. I'm really proud of my colleagues who have got certification of advanced level or higher, more than a dozen of them. Okay, and this is very important because when you undergo trainings, you will have this know-how, and then you will be better put it into practice and collect good quality data, and analysis also becomes very easy. So now getting back to the testing procedures, quality control tools, what we have today. So we have today the quality control tools prior to pouring concrete, which is SQUID and SHAPE. I'll describe this. And post-concreting, the integrity methods, the low strain integrity, pile integrity test, the cross-hole sonic logging, and thermal integrity profiler, and the high strain dynamic test. So we'll just examine very briefly each one of them. So this is the SQUID for shaft quantitative identification device. This will evaluate the thickness of contamination at the bottom of the boreholes, because this is very important for particularly the end-bearing piles, which is deriving its capacity mostly from the base, say, for example, the rock-socketed pile. We do not want to see any contamination at the base of the pile. So if it does, then the piles will experience large settlements during the load test, and then you will not get the requisite factor of safety. So even prior pouring the concrete, if we can monitor the quality aspects and ensure that there's no contamination at the base of the boreholes, I think we are assured of the requisite factor of safety from that pile. So the equipment looks like this. It has 3 penetrometers at the base. It could be like a conical penetrometer, is similar to what we normally use in the CPT test and in the geotechnical investigation. It could also be a flat cone, a flat base. The area of this will be 10 centimeters square. Okay, this also has a retractable plate. As you push this tool into the borehole, there will be a penetration of this cone, and these retractable plates move up. There's a force measured by the cone, and there's a displacement measured by this retractable plate. This can be connected to the Kelly bar of the piling rig directly. So this is how it is attached. You could also have various sizes of these adapters. Depends on the tool available on the site, the 6 inches, 8 inches, 10 inches, or so on. Okay. Now, as the tool is lowered into the bottom of the borehole, okay, and then the force is released by the Kelly bar, these cones start penetrating into the base of the borehole. The colored zone could be a contamination, okay, and the retractable plates move up, so that's why you see the displacements. So what is the philosophy of this? The philosophy of this goes back to the Tezagi's ultimate bearing capacity theory. We all know that for circular foundation, the ultimate bearing capacity is given by this formula. Now, when you have the contamination, which is assumed to be cohesive material or consistency of 12 to 100 kilopascal, if anything less than 12 kilopascal shear strength, it is expected that the contamination gets displaced when you pour the concrete. If it is more than 100 kilopascal, then it is also treated as a natural material. So anything between 12 to 100 kilopascal consistency is treated as the contamination. Why is this 12 to 100 kilopascal? Not necessarily 12 to 100 kilopascal. We have some guidelines for experience. Can I request all of you to mute, please? Can I request? Somebody is unmute. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Sorry about this. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you. So, why is this 12 kilopascal, 100 kilopascal? So, this is some guidelines with Pile Dynamics have arrived. If we have some local experience that, okay, up to 20 kilopascal, the consistency of the muck can displace, we are free to use that. If we want that, okay, up to 150 kilopascal, only then I consider this a natural material. We are free to use that. And this equipment has that option to actually input that value. So we have the probe threshold and the debris threshold values. We can actually input that based on our local experience. But as a general guideline, 12 to 100 kilopascal is what suggested by Pile Dynamics, which you compute for that 10 centimeter square area. You get a force of 0.09 kilonewton to 0.7 kilonewton, corresponding to 12 kilopascal and 100 kilopascal. So when you start lowering into the bottom of the boreholes, there will be a displacement of the retractable plates, and then there is a force measured from the 3 probes. When you reach between 1 to 2 kips, it is around 5 to 10 kilonewtons. You can actually stop the test because you are already reaching a natural material. You can unload, and then you can release the force and also release the displacement plates. So in the enlarged screenshot, so this is the displacement corresponding to a force of 0.07 kilonewton, which is corresponding to 12 kilopascal shear strength. This is 70.7 kilonewton corresponding to 100 kilopascal. The difference will be the thickness of the contamination at that probe location, and likewise for the other probe location. The philosophy now is the average of these 3 things should be less than some limit, some guidelines. So there are some guidelines that it should not be more than half an inch. There are some very strict guidelines in the US. So if it is more than half an inch, I think you have to clean the boreholes and redo the test. So this is how you see the data on the tablet. Directly, it can give the thickness of those contamination for each of those probe location. Okay, if it is more than half an inch, here in this case the averages are nearly 4 inch. Probably you have to do the cleaning of the boreholes and redo the test. When you actually redo the test, you see there is no contamination at all at the base of the borehole. Therefore, you are very confident that the piles are going to take the load that you expect. Now, we introduced this in the Metro project. This is first of its kind in the country today. The squid equipment was connected to the Kelly bar of the piling rig. We released lower down into the bottom of the pile borehole. You see the contamination at one of the probe is 79.4 millimeter, 136 millimeter, 81 millimeter. The average is nearly more than 4 inches. So then the thickness is not acceptable, particularly for an end-bearing pile. If this is a large diameter pile, you could do the test at different quadrants, 5 times 5 numbers, because all the 5 trials you can take the average. If it is a small diameter, say around 800, 900 millimeter, you could do 5 trials at one same place and take the average of all the 5 trials. Okay. In this quadrant, you see the average is also still very high. And the next quadrant is very high as well. And the other quadrant also is very high. So it requires the pile has to be cleaned. before they pour the concrete. When you remove the squid, you see the contamination sticking to the cones and the retractable plates. So this was a pilot project we commissioned, but apparently the contractor did tell us they cleaned the borehole before pouring the concrete. We did not do the test after this exercise. Probably in the next occasions when we have more database, I can share more information to you in the future. So the next one is the shape. It's called Shaft Area Profile Evaluator. So this is also a quality control tool for prior to pouring the concrete. So this tool, like the squid, can be connected to the Kelly bar of the piling rig. This has 8 ultrasonic sensors embedded radially. Okay, so these ultrasonic sensors will release the pressure waves when there is a change in the geometry of the piezoelectric element due to voltage. Okay, so as you pass this equipment into the pile borehole, the pressure waves is released. It hits the boundary wall. Okay, and there's a time recorded, and you know the velocity. There are 2 sensors at a known distance behind these sensors radial, which is embedded radially, which will actually measure the wave speed for calibration purpose. So what this shape will give you will be the profile of the pile bore excavation. What you could see here is the top of the pile, which has a liner. So there's no change. Below the liner, you see there's already an eccentricity. So the alignment has slightly changed. You see this is a diameter at the bottom, the red one, and diameter of the top. So the eccentricity is already there. So if there is an eccentricity, I think this will induce moments, and thus it will also reduce your load carrying capacity. Now, there is also a problem the contractors normally face when pouring the concrete. Suppose there is a weak material, there is a lot of concrete has gone in, the consumption of the concrete is more than the theoretical concrete. So you'll never be able to argue with the client because they will have a specific numbers that is put in the tender that the theoretical consumption, but actual consumptions could be much higher. So therefore, the shape can actually give the shape of the pile borehole excavations, can help you mitigate some kind of disagreement with the owners on the projects. Okay, this like squid, this also can be viewed on the tablet called Shaft Area Profile Evaluator. In all directions, you could see the alignment of the pile borehole. This has been not commissioned yet, but it is available in Bangalore at the moment. Because of pandemic, we are unable to commission yet. So we are soon going to commission and popularize this quality control tool to the market. Okay. How many of you think that this is really powerful, sir? The quality control board shape and squid. If you agree, please agree on type agree on the chat box. So I want little interaction now. I will make you little interact with me. Please type out agree on the chat box if you agree. These two are very powerful quality control tool prior to pouring the concrete. So many, awesome. Awesome, thank you. So I request all of you to participate. I have few more things because I want to know that you are listening to me, and also if there is anything I wanted to share again, I can do that. So all your questions, please hold your question. I will answer all your questions towards the end. Okay. Now let us move on to the next topic, quality control after pouring the concrete. Okay. One is to evaluate the integrity. So what are the methods we have? We have the low strain integrity test, cross-hole sonic logging, and thermal integrity profiler. Okay. Let us examine briefly each one of them. The low strain methods is a quick and cost-effective to evaluate the shaft integrity of concrete, and this test is able to provide information on continuity, location of defect, and degree of defect. This will not give the bearing capacity of the pile, okay? And this is performed with a handheld hammer and a sensitive accelerometer and a pile integrity tester. So why do we do the test? In order to find defects, assure quality, and reduce the risk. We do not want the deep foundations like this and it doesn't carry the load that we wanted. And finally, jeopardize the safety of foundation and the risk also, right? So the test is performed by mounting the axiometers on top of a pile, and with a small handheld hammer, an impact is given, and there's a velocity time history. This is the top of the pile. Now we are already familiar with this curve. This is the response from the toe. This is the bottom of the pile, right? So whenever you see a major defect, there will be an early response, early reflection of this downward traveling wave, and that's how you'll be able to see on your screen. Okay, the test is performed by actually preparing the pile top. All the loose contaminated concrete has to be removed. Okay, and then the locations where you mount the sensor has to be grinded properly to get a flat surface. And with a small handheld hammer, you can give an impact. Okay, and connect to the pile integrity test, and you will see this velocity time history. Okay, this is the top of the pile, this is the bottom of the pile. If there is no resistance or your impedance change, the cross-sectional change, this is how the data look like. But if you see any necking, okay, you will see a positive reflection. If there is any bulging, you will see a negative reflection here. Okay, this is very simple. But what you require is to get good quality data. So in order to get good quality data, there is some amount of preparation is necessary in the site. So you need to prepare the pile top by removing the contaminated concrete. Okay, cut the rebars to minimum length and bend it outside wherever possible. Make the flat spot. Attach the sensors by grinding the surface where you'll have a smooth surface. Okay. Now, what do you think on this pile, top of the pile, the surface pile top preparation? If you think this is good, you type good. If it is bad, you type out bad in the chat box, please. The pile top is not grinded in this case. Okay, so it is not acceptable. This pile top should be ground to get a nice flat spot to attach the axometers. Otherwise, it becomes very bad. Yeah, many of you are giving feedback bad. Awesome. Okay. Now, there are different type of equipment. Okay, is a hammer, the axometer, and a tablet to get the data. So there's a wireless axometers could be used, and this model has a very small in size. It can be a palm top. You can see it on your hand. Okay, but the interpretations remain the same. And more importantly, you have to decide on the size of the hammer. So why is this important on the size of the hammer? On the left side, you see there's a 1 pound hammer, and the bottom is a 6 pound hammer, which has a very high width of the pulse. This is a small width of the pulse, and there's a sharp impact. Okay. Now, why this is important? Because the width of the initial pulse affects the evaluation. For a very wide pulse, the reflection from the defect overlaps the initial pulse, making it even wider. So if there is any defect near the pile top, that is getting masked. So you will not be able to detect this if you have a very big hammer. But if you have a small hammer, probably you can evaluate the defect near the pile top. Okay, that's where you have to calibrate these hammers for different type of the piles, sizes of the piles. So as I said in the beginning, the piles can be very small in diameter to very large in diameter. It can be at a shallow depth of say around 1.5 to 2 meters, and also the piles could go to around 70-80 meter is not uncommon for particularly the bore piles, right? So you see the data here on the left side. Top one is a 6 Newton hammer, which has a very wide impact pulse. Okay, when you use a small hammer 1 Newton, the width is small and you have a sharp peak. Okay, and the toe response is very evident. In the top, you don't have a toe response. It becomes extremely difficult if you do not have a toe response. Likewise, on the right side, top one is a 6 Newton. Okay, the width of the pulse is very large, no toe response, and at the bottom you see the width is small with a sharp peak, and you see a toe response. It becomes very easy for you to interpret this kind of data. So how is this data looking at? Please type out in the chat box, please. How do you look at this data? You see the top of the pile and the response on the pile toe, right? You see any anomalies here? There's no anomalies here, okay? Because there's no positive reflections. So this data should be very ideal, very good data. Now there's another case for testing on a tower foundation. You see the top of the pile, there's a toe response, even earlier to toe response, you see a positive reflection, okay, which indicates serious defects. When they actually coat the pile, you could see the defect in the concrete, okay. So this PIT is very powerful tool for evaluating major defects. Okay, you could also run a profile analysis if you know the volume of the concrete that goes into the pile. Is the top of the pile, okay, the bottom of the pile. You can run this profile analysis to get the shape of your pile by the PIT Windows software. And here it is very good pile, okay. Now you have to tell me now. So please tell me what do you think of the this pile on the top, the first one. Is it a good pile? Is it a bad pile? Please type out on the chat box, please. The top one. Is it good pile or a bad pile? If it is good, type out good. If it's bad, type out bad. Very good. Good. Thank you. So awesome. Very nice response. So this is a good pile. Okay. Now come to the second one. So what do you think on the second one about this? This is a negative reflection. So what do you think on the negative reflection now? Negative reflection. Positive is bulge. Yes, somebody is telling it's bulge. Good. So this pile, there is a bulge because there is a negative reflection. Is pile with bulge. And what's the last one? So can anybody type out what is the last one? So what do you think on the last one, the third one? Anomalies, crack, the top one, defect. Yeah. So there is a serious defect near the top of the pile. Okay. And you see a positive reflection close to the pile top. With a serious defect near the top of the pile. So this is how the interpretation. So to get this kind of good interpretation, you need to get good data. So if you do not have do not get good data, it becomes extremely difficult to analyze. So there are many other interpretation methods. Even before interpretation, you have to do the conditioning of the data. I'm not talking about this because there's no time. It is a fun full day course of actually learning about the pile integrity test itself. Okay. Now I'll just share with all of you one case study. Okay. So you see the top of the pile, there is a bulge. Okay. And then there's a neck. Okay. We see that positive reflection is a neck and the negative reflection is a bulge. We have understood that. And for the given pile length, you see the toe response here. Okay. So is this bad or good? Well, let us examine that. Actually, this is a positive reflection because the bulge is returning to its nominal diameter. So let us see what is this bulge returning to nominal diameter. Okay, so this is how the bulge is there, very close to the pile top. Okay, and then this is returning to your nominal diameter. So for that kind of data, I think our boys have gone and actually physically measured what is the diameter at various pile penetrations, which is what you see here. The average of this is between 1.4 to 1.6 meters. Okay. If you run a profile analysis, also the bulge is evident here and it is returning to a nominal diameter. This per se is not bad pile. Okay, this is a bulge returning to nominal diameter. So when you have a negative followed by a positive, I think you have to be very careful in the interpretation. But if there is a positive first and a negative, it is for 100% sure there's going to be a defect in the pile. Okay, and slow with the other direction, the photographs clearly indicates there is a bulge returning to nominal pile diameter. Okay, now, so what do you think of this? Pile length is 5 meter. Pile length is 5 meter. Okay, so what do you think of this pile? So can you type out in the chat box? Is it good pile, bad pile, or is it a short pile? Please type out on the chat box. Short pile. Yes. Awesome. See now, short pile. Very nice. Now, why is the short pile? So let us examine this. This pile length is 5 meters is given by the client. Okay. When you actually look at the data, there's a positive reflection happening prior to the toe, right? So that means this length of the pile up to 3 meters, the integrity is fine, but below that is a question mark. Okay. Now, when you actually exhume the bottom of the pile, 3 meters, up to 3 meters in the top, it is excellent, and below 3 meters, I think there's no concrete here. That's where you see a positive reflections indicating a serious defect in the pile. So this is how these tests are powerful in evaluating the major defect of the pile, and this pile can be considered a short pile because the length is only 3 meters. Beyond that, it is not going to carry any load. Even if you run a profile analysis, you see the volume of the concrete consumed is only 70%. Okay, for that 70%, the shape of the pile is very good only in the top 3 meters, and beyond that, there's no concrete. Yeah, okay. Okay, I can skip this. And similar one I explained. So we have seen so many cases that just as illustrations, I picked up 2 cases. Now we saw the force, velocity time history, positive peak first, and then go to the toe. You see the response from the toe. There are some equipment which give you a mirror image of what the data we've seen earlier. This is an European made equipment. The earlier one is the US made equipment. So don't get confused. This equipment is also in the market today. This only the interpretation is a mirror image. Okay. Now, the advantage of PIT is it's fast, expensive, mobile equipment. It requires minimum support, and you can test as many piles as possible. Now, the guidelines is to test 100% of the pile. No advanced planning is required, like the next one I'm going to discuss. Okay, only the pile top preparation is necessary. Okay, and it will find the major defects. We have already seen some illustration. Okay, now moving on, the next integrity method is the cross-hole sonic logging test. So this is frequently specified to detect defects in the drill shafts. Since the drill shafts are very few in numbers, for a pier you may have some 3, 4, 5 drill shafts. So each of those drill shafts are expected to perform very well, and we have to assure the integrity of those foundations. So how the test is performed? The test is performed by embedding the access tubes, is a PVC or a steel tubes tied to the reinforcement, okay, prior to pouring the concrete. And then you pour the concrete with the bottom closed and fill these tubes with water. And this is how the access tubes are embedded. How many access tubes to be installed? That depends on the diameter. As a thumb rule, for every 300 millimeter diameter, 1 access tube is required. Okay, then you insert the probes. One is the transmitter, the other one is the receiver. So once you insert these probes to the bottom and you pull the probes bottom up, for every 50 millimeter, then there is a sonic waves that is emitted from the transmitters, which is received by the receiver. There is a time is recorded, and you know the velocity. So it's like your ultrasonic pulse methods for concrete. Okay, as you do a bottom pull up, every 50 millimeter, you will be able to record the data. So this is how the configuration of the access tubes depends on the size of the pile. If it's a larger diameter, you can have up to 6 in numbers or even more. For a barite or a diaphragm wall, you can embed this in every 1 meter distance. Okay. Now, very important is to measure the distance between the access tube. Because this measures the time, and you know the distance to get your speed and the velocity. This is a CHAMP cross-hole analyzer, the latest model called CHAMP Q. Okay, this can be calibrated as per ASTM standards for once in every 2 years. And recently, those probes are called trans receivers. It can transmit as well as it can receive from the other trans receiver. Okay, so this is also the certificate of those trans receivers. These trans receivers need not be calibrated. Only the equipment has to be calibrated as per the ASTM standards. And you see the different color-coded wires that goes into these probes. So you can use 4 probes at a time. So the efficiency has now improved by 6 times. That means you can introduce these trans receivers in 4 access tubes and pull simultaneously. So all possible combination these 4 probes are introduced can be recorded with the data. So this has actually increased the efficiency by 6 times. Okay, this one of the accreditation sites we try to introduce this cross-hole sonic logging test is only a 3 access tubes. You see the 3 wires going round and is pulling simultaneously. If you have 4, you can put 4. You have more piles, you have to do second trial. Okay. Now these sonic pulses are emitted. Okay, and then it is received by the receiver. Okay, there is a transit time between the emitted signal and the received signal. This is how, and this cross-hole sonic logging test will give you a waterfall diagram. Okay, first arrival time is very essential here. Okay, this is how the waterfall diagram. If there is any defect, then the first arrival time is delayed, which will tell us there is a defect. Okay, very simple to interpret. The waterfall diagram is here, and you see the first arrival time is delayed. And so with the energy, wherever there is a delayed first arrival time, the energy is going to be very less here. So this is low, and this is high energy, and this is the first arrival time. So the first arrival time is delayed here, in this case, which indicates defect in the pile. Okay. So this is a good pile where you have the signatures with high energy, the reduced signal strength, lower energy, or a delayed arrival time indicates defect in the pile. Okay, so interpreting flaws and defects is very simple. On the screen you could see on the waterfall diagram, and you could actually find out where the defect is. So I'll give some exercise now. After day 1 concrete, day 2, day 3 concrete. So when to do that test? So generally some guidelines says up to 7 days. So it's good that between 3 to 7 days, anytime you can do the test. And again, you should start doing the test repeatedly, maybe 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, 6 days, because if you use PVC tube, there could be some debonding issues. So up to what time after the debonding will happen, you have to evaluate that. And within that time period, it is good to start doing the test. So, so in order to avoid any wrong interpretation, okay, so generally between 3 to 7 days, you could do the test. Okay, so you see the waterfall diagram, the first arrival time is delayed, and there is a serious defect on top of the pile. Okay, now where do you think the defect is in this pile? Can you put it on the chat box, please? Where do you think the defect is there on this pile? Awesome. It is at the bottom. It's the toe, near the toe. Very good. It's the bottom. Good. Bottom. Okay. You see the bottom of the pile is defective. Okay. When they actually exhumed, you could see the defect in the pile. On this, where do you think the defect is there on the pile? Nice. Very good. Very good. Near the top. Near the top. While pouring concrete below water, there was some tremor issues. Okay. There was some bleeding in the concrete. And when they actually recovered the cores, you see the contamination, and thus the shaft was rejected. Very nice. Awesome. So as I said, for accreditation purpose, we actually tested one good pile and one bad pile. There was a forced defect into the one of the piles. Now you tell me what is the quality of this pile. Please type out in the chat box, please. What is the quality of this pile? Awesome, sir. Awesome. Awesome. Good. Good pile. So this is actually a good pile, right? Now, good. Good pile. How about this? Where do you think the defect is there? This is 2.5 meters, 3.5 meters, 4.5 meters. Halfway, midway, bad in the middle, bad in the middle. So this is exactly, you see the defect. This is the first arrival time is delayed. The energy is low. You should have a constant energy here, but energy is low here. It clearly indicates that defect is exist. So that's where you need to do with all possible combination of the access tubes. Okay, this is in one combination. The same thing is there in the other combination. If it is visible in all combination, that means the defect is throughout the cross-sectional area of the pile. Awesome. Now, when you did the integrity of the pile on the pile, you see the top of the pile, the response from pile, there's no anomaly, there's no positive reflection on the good pile, but for the bad pile, you see an early reflection happening ahead of the toe. This indicates a serious defect, which has been confirmed by the cross-hole sonic logging test as well. Okay. Now, you can also run a tomography, which can give you a 3-dimensional picture with the tomography software. So how to quantify the defects, okay, and where it is, whether it's localized in one quadrant or it is extending throughout the cross sections, you could actually run a tomography 3-dimensional analysis using a tomography software to get some picture of the defect. So in summary, the automated defect analysis can assess concrete quality and provides numerical and graphical presentation. Shaft with no defects need not to be done anything because it's really good. And if the defect is there in all possible combination and extends throughout the cross section, then you don't need to do any extra analysis. If you think that there's a defect in some combination of test and is absent in the other combination, you could also visualize that these defects are localized to some quadrant. So you may have to run some kind of tomography software to quantify, and then probably some remedial measures if you want to think of. Maybe you can grout those area, and shaft with local defects can be analyzed with tomography. So I'll come back to this next one little later. I will going to discuss the last aspect, maybe another 10 minutes. I can come to conclusions and take your questions. Maybe I'll play this video first. This is a thermal integrity profile. I will just play this. Is only a 2-minute video is there to give you some insight on how is this thermal integrity test provided.
Thermal integrity profiling. A concrete shaft is drilled on a bridge construction project. Access tubes are tied to the reinforcement cage and concrete is poured. About a day after, the integrity of the shaft is tested by thermal integrity profiling, or TIP. TIP is performed while the concrete is curing, since the heat that it generates is a function of concrete volume and quality. An engineer inserts a thermal probe in one of the access tubes and lowers it down the tube. The probe measures the temperature of the curing concrete and an instrument records it. Cooler temperatures indicate reductions in concrete volume or poor concrete quality. Warmer temperatures indicate increases. The engineer repeats the test for each of the tubes. In another test setup, the reinforcement cage is fitted with thermal wires instead of access tubes. The wires contain sensors that constantly measure the concrete temperature. The engineer analyzes data on a computer displaying the measured temperatures along the length of the shaft for various measurement points. The total volume of concrete installed in the shaft is shown on construction records. An engineer runs software which uses that information and measures temperatures to estimate the shape of the shaft. The engineer also evaluates the thickness of the concrete cover and the cage alignment. TIP evaluates concrete quality and shaft integrity not only inside, but also outside the reinforcement cage.
So the cross-hole sonic logging test will evaluate the integrity within the reinforcement because that is where you are making the measurements. But the thermal integrity profiler, not only inside, but also it covers the cover portion up to the diameter of the pile. Okay, so we do not have the technology yet in the country today. We will introduce this year. Probably to the market because it's one of the very powerful integrity methods. So the last part is the high strength dynamic test. So we discussed about the quality controls before pouring concrete, the squid and the shape, and after pouring the concrete, the low strength integrity test or PIT, the cross-hole sonic logging test, and I just made an introduction video on the thermal integrity profiler. So now we'll talk about the load carrying capacity methods called high strength dynamic test using the pile driving analyzer. Okay, so here is a strain gauge accelerometer which will be mounted near the pile top, somewhere around 1.5 to 2 times the diameter below the pile top. A pair of strain gauge and accelerometers on either side, diametrically opposite. For board piles, we'll have to use additional strain gauge. I'll describe that in a minute. It could be on a steel pile or it could be on a concrete pile, and these are connected to the pile driving analyzer. Okay, when there is an impact, the stress waves propagates along the length of the pile, and there is a reflection from the bottom. So what you see is the force velocity time history. You're already familiar with that. You see the force and velocity are on top of each other. It indicates there is no resistance, right? When there is a separation of waves that you could see here, it means there is a significant resistance being activated along the shaft, that is your skin friction. Okay. Now, there could be two extreme conditions in interpreting the data. One is your free end, the other one is a fixed end, and this is very, very important. So when you get a free end, when you're driving a pile which is going into soft clays, so what's happening? The piles are moving. So why is it moving? Because there is a free end. Okay, the reflected waves is in tensions, it pulls the particle down. That is where you see the velocity at the toe response is positive here. Okay, velocity is positive at the toe. Okay, that is treated as free end. The other extreme is when you socket the pile into the rock. Okay, the reflected wave will not be in tension, it will be in compression. So if it is in compression, then it will be a rebound. So the velocity will be negative. Okay, that's how you see a negative velocity at toe indicates very large resistance. Okay, positive velocity at toe indicates very poor resistance, or maybe no resistance. Okay, in between the top of the pile and the bottom of the pile where you see this toe response, if there is a separation of the wave, okay, force and velocity, it indicates your skin friction. The area under the curve will be your magnitude of the skin friction. So this is very simple. Okay, but you have to learn deeper into it. You need to attend the training programs. Okay, we can also discuss that on the derivation and so on. So this is a force velocity time history. Okay, top of the pile, you see the response from the toe. This can also be split into what is coming down and what is going up the pile. So downward traveling wave and upward traveling wave. That separation of waves is not been taught now. I'm not going to discuss because it's going to take little time. I just wanted to illustrate. So once you get the data, raw data from the pile driving analyzer, so pick up one of these data and then import into the CAFEP software. So CAFEP is a case pile wave analysis program. It's an iterative process. So this is how the raw data looks like. You could analyze force, velocity, time history, force time history, velocity time history, or you can also analyze the upward traveling waves. These are all interrelated. So what you see here is one of the measured signature, okay, the black one, and the red one, once you import to the software, is not on top of each other. That's why your analysis is not complete. You don't have a solution. So initial analysis is very poor. Then you redistribute resistance along the length of the pile and your base. Probably the analysis now is slightly improved, but not good or satisfactory. You adjust your damping factors. Now the dotted lines is your computed curve from the software. The thick line is your measured curve from the pile driving analyzer. So with this adjustment of damping, it is coming pretty closer. You adjust the soil quakes. You adjust some total capacity, some unloading parameters. Now you see the measured and the computed signatures are on top of each other. Okay, this completes your analysis. You can go to the output. When the output, the right side is your raw data from your pile driving analyzer. Okay, so how is this data looking at? Please type out in the chat box to you. So this is the top of the pile, 2L by C time thereafter, you see a negative velocity. What does the negative velocity indicates to you? Is it going to be a high end bearing or a high friction? Please type out on the chat box. Please type out on the chat box. Is it going to be a high end bearing or a high friction with a negative velocity at the toe? Awesome, awesome. It's a high end bearing. Okay, the raw data suggests that is a very high end bearing with a negative velocity. Okay, the bottom right is the unit skin friction distribution along the length of the pile, the top of the pile, and this is the bottom of the pile. The left side top one, you see the force measured and the force computed exactly on top of each other. It completes your analysis we have seen in the previous slide. This is going to give you an equivalent static load displacement curve, okay, and the total capacity, the skin friction, and the end bearing. So we saw that the velocity is very, the negative, and the end bearing is very high, and that's how you see the end bearing computed from this is 1378 metric tons as against 577 in the friction. Okay. So this is be the output of the CAFEP, and you see the match quality is 2.66. General guidelines, it should be less than 5. That is the relation between your computed and the measured signature. 0 match quality is actually a theoretical value. Sometimes, many times we can get less than unity. Somewhere less than 5 is acceptable. So we need to try to get as low as possible. We can fit that guideline. So as low as possible, your analysis is much better and better. So we can keep our guidelines that the analysis could be less than 3 would be a reasonable one, so that you can get the reasonable results from this CAFEP analysis. So I'll quickly run through the procedures. This is the pile driving analyzer. There are different models, and this is the latest one called 8th generation model, which is having a lot of software development, hardware change, but the interpretations has not changed for the last 50 years. Okay, so very important is to prepare the pile top, mount your sensors on top of the pile, place a cushion, and then give an impact to test the board piles from a dead weight. The dead weight can be somewhere between 1 to 2% of the ultimate capacity to be proved. Once you give an impact, the force velocity time history is captured from the pile driving analyzers. Now we are already very familiar with this curve. So what you require is the pile geometry, grade of concrete, volume of concrete, reinforcement details, because these will dictate you when to stop the test. You don't want to overstress the pile material. Geotechnical data, load to be proved, so accordingly you can choose the dead weight to be dropped on the pile, and what is the pile length available for the test area, because you need to prepare the pile top. Either you can grow the pile above the ground, or you can excavate around the pile and prepare this test section, which will be around 2.5 times the diameter. You can mount your sensors 1.5 to 2 times below the pile top. Very important, again, like PIT, you need to give utmost importance to pile top preparation by reinforcing the test section, removing all the contaminated concrete, okay, and then pour the concrete, vibrate it, make it level. If you do not follow these procedures, you will not get good pile top. Okay, these steps will give you a very good pile top, very good data. Your analysis becomes very simple. So what do you think on this pile top? Can you put it on the chat box? Is it good or bad? Please put it on the chat box. Nice. Very good. Very nice. Very nice. Very nice. Okay. You need to have good pile top. Okay. Then at the location where you want to mount your sensors, you try to mark, and these sensors has to be along the pile axis, particularly axometer. Otherwise, your data will be actually giving you a wrong measurement on the cosine of that inclination. So it has to be along the pile length. Okay, diametrically opposite, one strain gauge you mount here, one axometer, and then 180 degrees apart, because there's going to be severe bending. So we need to take the average of the opposite sensors, particularly strain gauge. Particularly for the board piles, it is preferred to have the sensors mounted at every 90 degrees, so that if one of them is not working, you need to clip off the opposite one. So you do not have any data to analyze. So if you have 4 strain gauges, if one of the strain gauges is malfunctioned, and you can clip off the opposite one, but still you have another pair to run the analysis. So we'll see in one of the data. See, the good practice is to mount 4 strain sensors, particularly when you're testing large diameter drill shafts. Okay. So these are 4 strain sensors. Always make it a practice to have 4 strain sensors. That will make your life very easy. Otherwise, it will be miserable. If you don't get data, then you have problems. So what do you think on this pile top? So put it on the chat box, please. Put it on the chat box. What do you think on this pile top? Please type out. Bad, bad. Please type out. Awesome. 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 Very good. So when you are mounting these sensors on this bad pile top, can you get good data? Definitely you can't get good data, right? And if the pile tops are not strengthened properly, it's not prepared properly, during an impact it breaks. So once you breaks, then you lose all the time and opportunity to do the test. So you have to redo it and come back again after curing 14 days, 28 days. So time and money is lost. So at the first place itself, we do the things right. It will also damage your sensors, which is very expensive, $1,200. The cost price bringing to India, you'll have to pay customs 35%. Okay, so never do shortcuts so that you damage the sensors. And these dead weights has to be dropped on top of the pile. Safety is a concern, so you have to be very careful on how to drop with most safety methods. So one of them, there are some improvisations on the donut system. This is a small 3-ton dead weight being dropped on a 600 diameter pile. Okay, you could cut the wire rope at the top, but this is a donut system, so it's getting dropped on top of the pile. Yes, you have an impact. Once you have an impact, you could actually collect the data, force velocity, time history. So there are various dead weights that can be adopted. I'll just illustrate some few case studies, maybe another 2-3 minutes, and I can conclude this session. Okay. Now, there's a 4 strain gauges. I always said that large diameter, you mount 4 strain gauges 90 degrees apart, and this is 2 axiometers is good enough. Actually, axiometers should be on top of each other. So since you have 4 strain gauges and 2 axiometers, you could choose or pick up the good data. So the minimum sensors required is 2 axiometers and 2 strain gauges and 1 axiometers to further analyze. Okay. So in these 4 strain gauges and 2 axiometers, you could always pick up 1 axiometers and 2 strain gauge data. See, F34 is a 2 strain gauge data, axiometer is 1. Very nice data. There's a good proportionality here. Okay. And you see the separation of the waves. This is a skin friction, and you have significant end bearing also towards the toe of the pile. Very nice data. So you see the CAPAP, the raw data. Okay, this is a pile model or a pile impedance, unit skin friction distribution, measured and computed signature, equivalent static load distribution curve, the total capacity, skin friction, and end bearing capacity. I think now already you are familiar. The match quality is very low here, so 1.22. Okay. So this another spun pile. You see the integrity factor is 100%. The best data you could see here. Proportionality is good. This is the top of pile, bottom of the pile. Separation of the waves indicates some resistance. High end bearing velocity is negative at the toe. Okay. And the blue one is an upper traveling waves. So probably it may be a little difficult for you all. Okay, but is all related. So before the toe, you see a velocity rising up. Positive velocity means it's a free end. Free end means there's going to be a defect. Okay. So if you bring this into the CAPAP, you have to model the defect here. If you do not model the defect, I think your match will not happen between the measured and computed signature. Okay. So when you have a good solution, you're already having the impedance reduction here. That's a defect that's already there in the data. Okay. Now, what do you think of this data? This is your toe of the pile. Earlier to the toe, the velocity is positive here. Positive velocity indicates your free end. Free end is a defect or a good pile. So can you put it in the chat box, please? Good. Good. Thank you. Defect. Awesome. Defect. Okay. So this is a defect, right? So when you run the CAPAP analysis, this is a upper traveling wave. This is a tension here. Okay. This should actually happen at the toe, but if the tension is happening ahead of the toe, it indicates a defect. So the same thing is also visible here. The positive velocity is happening before the toe, it indicates defect. If you actually model this in the CAPAP, you see the reduction in the impedance is almost a free end. Okay. And the pile integrity is only okay up to this depth, and beyond that, there's a serious defect. Okay. If you do not model this impedance, again, I repeat, you have difficulty in getting this match between the computed and the measured signature. The last one is again a defect tension. This is a spun pile. Okay. The integrity factor is 47%. So anything less than 60% is broken pile as per the guidelines of the manual. Okay. You all said that this is a bad pile top, right? Here is an interesting one. The capacity is analyzed. For all the piles tested, there's around 415 metric tons required. It was analyzed, but this is a forensic study. When we re-looked into the data appears to be good. There's a separation of waves. Okay, velocity is negative, good results. But you see here the total capacity, the skin friction and the end bearing. If you add the end bearing 2770, 410 skin friction, this is not adding up to your total capacity 4180. So the software doesn't do this kind of mischief. Okay. Now the other one, I want you to look at this. There's no separation of waves. What do you think on the capacity? Do you have capacity or no capacity? Please put it on the chat box, please. I'm concluding, finish another 1 or 2 minutes, I'll close. there's no separation of waves between force and velocity, do you think that you have capacity? You have no capacity or you have high capacity? Very less capacity, maybe no capacity. Very good, very good. Awesome. Low capacity, no skin friction, fantastic. Very nice. So the raw data suggests there's no capacity, but the CAPAP is analyzed and reported to have 420 metric tons of capacity. So why this can happen? So it's not, may not be intentional. When the pile top is bad, you don't get data, the contractor is pushing you to give you a report. So we come, I think, go out of the way to manipulate the results. But when you do a forensic study, it's all be clearly evident. Okay. So I think this is the last one. You see the force velocity proportionality to be very good, to be unity for a good data. Here it is 2.2, indicates it's a very bad data. And you analyze this, the match quality is exceeding 5. Okay, and the pile impedance, you see the shape, it doesn't match actual construction. The unit skin friction distribution doesn't match. So there's an automatic analysis options in the software. You click the button, it does automatically. But whether the geotechnical evaluation makes sense is what we need to evaluate as a geotechnical engineer in this analysis. Okay, so and clearly if the match quality is exceeding the prescribed value of 5, and it will give you already warning in the output. So please watch out for that. Okay. I think I can conclude this last part of the last slide. There's one case study I wanted to demonstrate. This is a geotechnical data, N values with the refusal stratum. Okay. And piles are going into the refusal stratum. As you can evaluate your ultimate pile capacity, lower bound, mid bound, and upper bound, and compute your allowable capacity. This is where the designs have been made. Okay, when you actually test a pile, this is more than the structural capacity or the permissible structural capacity of the pile. So you see the conservatism that has been adopted, where the piles can take around 895 metric tons. It is designed for only 300 metric tons. So it's socketed into hard bedrock. Okay, the data is fantastic. You see the raw data here, friction, and also very high end bearing. The CAPAP also is giving you good resistance. Okay, good match quality 1.53. Okay, 8956 metric tons. So friends, the results of dynamic plate load test must be evaluated by a qualified and experienced geotechnical engineer. Okay, this is very, very important. In summary, this technology has proved worldwide application, confirms large capacity at large loads, reduced testing time and cost savings, PDA with CAPAP, evaluate capacity at low cost for driven piles, drill shaft, auger pass piles, concrete piles, steel pile, timber pile, doesn't matter. And it gives an extra valuable information on integrity, stresses, and hammer energy, potentially save times, improves quality control. Okay, and it will be a replacement to static load test, particularly in the offshore piles. With this, I thank you very much for your patient hearing. I'll be happy to address and take any of your questions. Thank you, sir.
The
Your
question is how to
audience, you can
select the
ask.
right hammer type in pile integrity test.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, sir. Go ahead. Please ask your question. Unmute and ask your question.
Sir, one of the question asked is how to select the right hammer in pile integrity test. Please elaborate on comparison between polymer and bentolite for hole stabilization.
Okay. So let us address the question one by one, what is relevant here. One is hammer type for pile integrity test. So when you go to a site, you should understand what is the actual geometry of the pile, length of the pile. As a thumb rule, the pile integrity test pile integrity test is going to be reasonable when you have an L by D of up to 30. Okay, so if you have 1 meter diameter pile, you have up to 30 meters, L by D is 30. Sometimes we also seen that piles going up to 50, 60 meters. Okay, so if you go with a small hammer, your stresses are not propagating onto the bottom of the pile. So you need to have a bigger hammer. So if you understand what is the geometry before you going to the site, you could have some 2 or 3 sizes of the piles, go there and do some preliminary test and see which hammers gives you consistent results. When you can get your toe response and use that hammer for your subsequent testing of the other piles in that particular site. If you go with a small hammer, you don't have a big impact. If you go with a big hammer, if there is a serious defect at the top of the pile, you will actually not be able to identify. So it has to be calibrated, site specific, on a particular large project. You should go with some different sizes of the hammers and evaluate. Okay, I hope that has answered his question. Please elaborate comparison between polymer and bentonite for hole stabilizations. I don't see there's much difference between polymer and bentonite. Both of them have similar application. Okay, but sometimes polymers are used, particularly in the marine environment, because you cannot exit the bentonite into the ocean. So that's where we use polymer. And polymer, I think chemically, I am not sure. I'm not an expert on that, but the materials cannot be reused while the bentonite can be reused again and again. Okay, I hope that has answered his question. In sight of some liquefaction control, is there any case studies? I think the topic of today's is only the testing per se. If there is any liquefaction of the ground assessed, probably you have to ignore that part of the section of those area where it gets liquefied. In steel piles, we will try to increase the thickness, or maybe you can increase your impedance. Okay, that's the design questions. Probably we can address it little later. Let me see if there is any question related to this. Why skin friction reduces near toe in case of high end bearing pile in the shown diagrams? No, the diagram, you actually have to go to the output. The skin friction doesn't reduce, but the output can only give you that much value. But if you go to the output, you can also get the skin friction analysis, also skin distribution. So it also depends on how do you match the curve. Okay, so that's where I said your geotechnically it should make sense, particularly the output. Okay, if you think that the skin friction is very low near the toe, maybe it is not your solution. So you increase your skin friction to match the curve. You'd go with some other alternative. Okay, so the analysis doesn't make sense geotechnically. Please revisit before you go to the output. And it's also in this CAPAP that the distinction between skin friction and end bearing in the bottom two element is extremely difficult. So you can have high end bearing, or you can have high skin friction. So the interchange you can play around. So that is actually a limitations of this test. You will not be able to get the accurate picture of the distributions between the end bearing and the skin friction, the bottom two element. So that's how we also do some kind of swapping analysis. There's a final run. So when you exchange that, there is no better solution with the other ones. Okay, so that's limitations is there. So you have to evaluate geotechnically. Is there any question I'm seeing? Okay, in case of bridges, there. Okay, let me go from the top and come if there is any question. There's a lot of color. Mute microscopes, highlighted, drawn. Agreed. Interesting. Okay, agreed. No question. Making that crack when mute. How to rectify the defect pile after casting? That depends on how you evaluate the defect, how much quantity of defect exists. If it's a localized, you can target. If the defect is throughout the entire cross section, then it becomes a short pile. Probably you have to ignore the capacity below that, or you may have to use some additional piles. So that depends on case to case basis. You can evaluate. Okay. In case of bridges, there will be an impact of tides on the piles. Is it going to affect the test results of IPT? I think it is PIT. I don't think it will impact the pit because we are only evaluating the integrity of the piles. So it will not affect. I hope that answers question. Feedback, login badge. Okay. Okay, I think I have answered Vishnumurthy's question. All the four, yes, I think. VS generation. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the compliments. Please explain tension pile. So tension pile, where do you see tension piles? When you have an uplift, you will have the tension piles. Any certification course for young geotechnical engineers before going to field? Chetan, we are working on this to start an academy. Actually, Professor Prasad sir is helping me to come out with a model. Okay, we will just launch very soon so that this knowledge can be imparted. And today we see lack of depth in the skills, particularly in these new technologies. And that's where, as a professional responsibility, I have personally taken this training initiative from Pile Dynamics. Okay, because from America, people have to come and train here is not possible. So they have shown confidence, and this also becomes more of a responsibility to us to impart knowledge. And I like to admit here, one way of learning is by teaching. So in the last couple of years, when I started training people, I think I have significantly learned what I have not learned in the last 15, 20 years. Because as a user, I would go to the site, get data, what is required. But now a lot of questions, feedbacks are coming. People are asking so much of doubts now. That makes you go and explore and then actually learn. So the better way of learning is to start teaching. So that's where I have experienced myself. And thanks to all my teachers and also all the teachers here, because you are doing a very good human service, sir. Tall tower will have, let me see, okay, how to execute piles with less defects. So that's a quality control on the construction aspects. I am not an expert on the construction of the piles, Mr. Kiran Jagdish. So I just try to skip this question. Tall tower will have tension in one leg member. How to ensure it will take full tension force? So full tension force, you will have to evaluate its tensile capacity. So how do we evaluate tensile capacity by this method? So you have a CAPAP. You also have a skin friction distribution. Okay, so in order to evaluate capacity, so the bottom two element of the resistance is ignored. The resistance, cumulative resistance towards the rest of the element is considered, and you apply a factor, maybe 0.8 or 0.7. That will be your tensile capacity from the CAPAP analysis. And we normally do that in the offshore application. Please share your experience on challenges faced at site. So all the case studies that has been presented is actually one of the other projects that we have actually involved. Okay, generally piles are round shaped, but here we saw square piles. Not necessarily, piles can be of any shape. It can be square, it can be octagon, it can be hexagon, it can be circular, doesn't matter. So what matters is your equivalent area that goes into the input. Okay. So I think I have answered all the questions, sir. If there is any question, I'll be happy. So thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Excellent, sir. Wonderful. So this is one area in which, many people will not be exposed to. In general, pile foundation, and in particular, testing of piles. I think, it was very exhaustive and excellent. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Please go ahead, Naveed.
Yeah, sorry, sir. Thank you, sir, for enlightening us on various deep foundation testing methods with case studies and with also good examples. With this, we have already finished our question and answer session. And now I request Nasra, third-year student, Department of Civil Engineering, to propose the vote of thanks.
Just before that, there is one question from Dr. Chandan Ghosh. I request.
Yeah, sure.
Dr. Parsarthi to answer. How to evaluate perfectly bent pile at any level?
How to evaluate perfectly bent pile? So if it's a forced bent or it is a construction problem?
Maybe you can address both because that's what he is asking. Okay.
It could
evaluation. He wants to know how do you assess the capacity. Dr. Chandan, can you
you can unmute
and talk?
Yeah, you can unmute and speak, sir.
Yeah. Chandan Ghosh, please unmute and speak.
So if it's a bent pile, obviously it is evaluated as a defect, and we do not want any defect in the pile because it jeopardizes the load carrying capacity of the pile.
He's trying to talk to me. Yeah, Chandan, please. Can you speak? Hello? Okay. Somehow not able to get. It's okay.
Maybe I'll call him. After this, I'll call him. I'll talk to him. So usually, maybe if I understood his question correctly, the bent pile probably is treated and identifies as a defect, and we do not want any defect in the pile which jeopardizes the load carrying capacity of the pile. Okay, so that may answer his questions. Anyway, I'll talk to him a little later.
Yes, sir. That will be great of you. That will be very nice. So thank you, Chandan, and I'll also talk to you later. So Naveed, yeah, please go ahead.
Sorry, I overrun the time.
It was wonderful, sir. It was wonderful.
It was a very informative session, sir. So Naveed, you can go ahead. Naveed?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Actually, I was on mute, sir. So thank you, sir, for this informative session. This was really a great session by you, sir. Thank you for this session. Now, as we all know, science is about knowing, engineering is about doing. The road to success is always under construction. With this, I request Nasra, third-year student, Department of Civil Engineering, to propose vote of thanks. Nasra.
Yeah. Good afternoon to one and all present here. It is my privilege to propose a vote of thanks and acknowledge the contribution to this webinar. I extend my gratitude to our resource person, Dr. C.R. Parthasarathy sir, for enlightening us on the deep foundation technology. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with all of us, sir. I express my gratitude to management and members of Vidyavardhaka Sangha for their continuous support in conducting this webinar. I would like to thank our principal, Dr. B. Sadashive Gowda sir, for his encouragement and support in organizing this webinar. I express my gratitude to our beloved HOD, Dr. S.K. Prasad sir, for his support and motivation in conducting this webinar. I express my thanks to all the participants for their active participation. I also express my thanks to Professor Anjan B.K. and Professor Arjun V. sir and members of Nirman Club for their kind cooperation in making this webinar successful. And I would like to thank all the teaching and non-teaching staff of VVC for their support. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much, sir. And thanks to all the support you gave, including giving the platform and your technical support. My thanks to your team also.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Nice
Keep
of
in touch.
you.
Yeah,
Okay,
we'll keep in touch.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.